Hello, I'm Chris Scherer, Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and welcome to the March 2026 SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting usually posted on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals, with more than 4,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. So, chances are that sometime in your career you've been involved with a studio project, whether it's a completely new facility or it's updating only part of one. Personally, I always enjoyed building new studios from the ground up. The reasons to build a new facility vary, of course. Perhaps a lease is due or the equipment has reached the end of its usable life. Perhaps a format change or a new program necessitates the update. Usually, when a change is coming, there's some warning or indication with a reasonable lead time. For KCUR and Classical KC in Kansas City, the stations were told to vacate their longtime studios with just about a 1 month notice. On today's SBE WEBxtra, I talked to Chris Pruitt about the series of events that led to a fast transition to temporary studios while the search for a new home began. But first, I have the SBE member update for March 16, 2026. Once again, there are lots of upcoming webinars by SBE on the calendar. Technical proof of performance, what remains required, and what data makes sense to routinely collect will stream on March 26. Broadcast stations are required to perform certain periodic measurement regimens. This webinar discusses the mandatory requirements and covers the best practices data to collect, the required time frame for collection, and the importance of these records. It's for both AM and FM stations. Greg Buchwald presents. The 2026 RF Safety Course will stream on May 14. Stephen Lockwood provides the latest update to this webinar, and it's designed for broadcast station personnel who need to have an understanding of RF safety issues and regulations. And Cooling Your Transmitter Site, presented by John Marcon, will stream on May 21st. This webinar discusses a real-life transmitter cooling scenario and how it's maintained. It includes the installation of a new 25-ton unit. You can always access the entire library of webinars by SBE presentations on demand. More information on these and all of them, go to sbe.org/webinars. The SBE, once again, is providing a 2-day, 2-track SBE Ennis workshop at the NAB show. The workshop will be held on April 21st and 22nd in the North Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center. The two separate educational tracks are From Signals to Success, RF 101 Gets You There, and Emerging Technology. The 2-day workshop includes lunch breaks. Registration for the SBE Ennis workshop at the NAB show is via the NAB show website. The cost is $289 and is separate from convention registration. Register now and reserve your spot at the SBE Ennis workshop. Get all the details at sbe.org. The next certification exam opportunity is in April at the NAB show, but the application window is now closed. The next chapter exam window is in June. Apply to take an exam at that time by April 13. If you don't want to wait, or if a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or not practical, private proctoring is available. And 2025 marked the 50th anniversary of SBE certification. To recognize the occasion, the SBE program of certification is challenging you to upgrade or obtain your certification through November 2026. Take the CERT Challenge, and you will not only further your professional standing, you could win a great prize. The SBE is also encouraging chapters to hold a meeting to discuss the benefits of SBE certification. This is called CERT Connect, and you can get all the details on both at sbe.org/CertConnect. More information on SBE certification overall is available at sbe.org/certification. The SBE membership year runs April through March. Your renewal is due by April 1st, which is coming up fast. Most members renew online, and that option is available at any time. In January, most members received an email reminding them to renew. If we don't have an email address on file, you'll get a postcard reminder. There's no need to wait for the reminder. You can renew at any time. Just go to the SBE website. You can pay with a credit card through our secure online payment system. And if you want to pay by check or need to submit an invoice, you can download the renewal form on the renewal page, sbe.org/renew. And that is your SBE member update for March 16th, 2026. On the SBE WEBxtra today, we get to hear about two radio stations in the extremely short timeline to relocate its studios. KCUR and KWJC Classical KC are licensed to the University of Missouri Kansas City, or UMKC. For years, their studios were in a building erected in 1949. Apparently, the building has been deteriorating for years, but near the end of 2025, it was so bad that all the occupants were told to vacate by the end of January this year. That gave them a 40-day notice. My guest today is Chris Pruitt, Director of Technology and Broadcast Operations for KCUR. Welcome to the SBE WEBxtra, Chris. How are you?
Doing good, thanks.
Good. Glad to see you today. Welcome, as I said. So you've had a little bit of excitement recently on the work front. I mentioned in the opening that personally building new studios was one of my favorite things to do. I always enjoyed the challenge of being able to kind of put my own mark on something. In your case, you're going to get to kind of do it twice in a way, temporarily and then for real, so to speak. But before we dive into that, tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been with UMKC and the stations, and how you kind of got into broadcasting in the first place?
Yeah, I started at UMKC in 2004, in June of 2004, working for the information services department. At the time, I was just working in their call center, helping people change their passwords, that kind of stuff. Uh, I moved out of desktop support, or I moved out of call center to desktop support. Started, going on site, working with computers in that aspect. And at the time, KCUR had a full-time IT person on staff, and the KCUR decided to outsource their IT to the university at that point. And the previous person had been like saving everybody's passwords in spreadsheets and doing all kinds of questionable security practices. So the entire department came up to KCUR and helped everybody change passwords, and a lot of things just broke. Um, I just happened to be walking past the studio when something was broke, and the CIO of the university at the time asked me to take a look. Got it working. He said, "Why don't you just stick around up here and just keep things running?"
No good deed goes unpunished.
Right. So, like 6 months later, they posted the job, and I had 6 months of experience at that point. So, and I really liked it. At the time, I was working at UMKC, so I could get my master's for a tuition discount. Decided I didn't really want to be a business manager. I liked working in radio. I liked all the exciting stuff that was going on at KCUR. So then I worked for the UMKC IT department at KCUR exclusively up until I think maybe 2023.
Okay.
And that's 2023, 2024. And the GM at the time said, our current engineer wants to move on to just working on classical exclusively. Do you want to take over broadcast operations? And I said no. But then I thought about it for a little while. And, I was kind of ready for some new things. I had kind of learned all the IT stuff that regularly went wrong. And so I came back to her and I said, actually, I really would like to do that. I just don't know a lot of it. And she said, no worries. He'll still be here. You can ask him questions and all that kind of stuff. But then 6 months later or so, he left. And it's been me in broadcast operations and just kind of a lot of learning, and just asking other engineers for help and how to do things. So
Sure. Well, you and I are both active in the Kansas City chapter of the Society of Broadcast Engineers. In fact, you're one of our co-vice chairs. And I know you've been to some of those meetings. I know you're getting a lot of good insight from some of the more seasoned gentlemen who show
Mhm.
up there. So that's always good for that route too. So you've kind of got thrown into the fire, it seems, in a lot of ways as far as picking up on the broadcast engineering side of your career. So
Yeah, I've
so
definitely learned more in these last like 2 months than in the last 2 years, I think. Just had a vague idea of how a lot of things worked, and I needed to know the specifics of how everything worked pretty quick. So
that'll
it's,
do it for you.
yeah.
So I mentioned the quick turnaround. It was roughly about a 40-day notice to say you got to get out of this building and somewhere else. Well, let's start where you were. What we're calling the old studios, which are less than 2 months away in your mind, I'm sure. But tell us about the previous facility and the operation of the two stations in that site. How long had you been in there to begin with?
So I think the station moved into there in 1985, but I'm
Oh,
I'm not 100% sure on that date, but it's been quite a while. Obviously I wasn't there at that point. But when I got hired for the IT department in 2004, they were located in the same building on the first floor.
hmm,
And before the IT department ended up having to move out of that building years ago because the first floor was sinking. And when I was in like our conference room in the IT department, the whole floor sloped in one direction, and people had like their chairs bungee corded to the table so they wouldn't slide away from the table while they were working.
oh man,
Like it was rough. Yeah. So the building having problems wasn't a surprise. Like it's been um and there's just kind of we've been having constant HVAC issues lately where, the air conditioner's down or the heater's down or there's a water leak and they put porta potties in the parking lot. They ended up bringing in um, an outdoor external air conditioning that they piped into the building to keep the building cool last summer. So we knew the building was going down fast.
yeah,
And the university about a year ago told us, they were going to sell our license, and we should start. Well, back up maybe 5 years ago, the university set aside like a block, 53rd to 54th Street on Troost, some property they owned, and they set that aside for KCUR. So we started a campaign to build a building there. And then, so then a year ago, when we found out they were going to sell our license, they told us they weren't going to give us that plot of land anymore. And we didn't really have time to build a building in the next 2 years before we got out of KCUR or got out of UMKC. So at that point, it was like, okay, we need to start looking for a place to move that we can just renovate. And before we really even found a place, then they told us we'd be out of the building. Um, so we've been working on moving, but not at this pace until like late December.
right. Well, yeah, the building itself I saw was built in 1949, so it's got some history, obviously. And you provided some photos that we're going to look through. There's one photo that shows a nice crack in the floor. Tiles are separating a little bit.
Yeah.
And then there's another shot that has, I'm not sure what you call the device, but it's mounted on in a corner on two walls. I'm guessing when it was first installed that the red crosshairs were centered on the X, and it's showing now that it has drifted. I'm not quite sure the units involved, but a significant amount that walls aren't supposed to move,
Right.
period,
Yeah.
let alone whatever the amount it is showing in the gap that's now formed between those two corners. So I can sort of understand. I guess they got to a certain point and somebody said, okay, this is really bad. We
These,
need to get you out of here, or who knows what could happen.
yeah.
So, and the building is still standing today. I mean, it's not falling
Mhm.
down yet, but obviously it's a preemptive effort to make sure nothing else happens. So,
I believe there's
um,
still like removing the networking infrastructure and all that kind of stuff because there's still
okay,
people there doing things, but
carefully working probably, and would hope somebody's monitoring the situation so
yeah.
the roof doesn't collapse or who knows what happens, or a sinkhole forms. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
So the temporary location you're in right now, was that kind of on the radar as far as a possibility, or was that a oh boy, we need something fast? What do we got?
So we kind of went through some phases and we had already been looking for new studio space, moving in with another radio station or even just any kind of a building that had room for us. And I think everybody, UMKC and KCUR, assumed we would just move out of this building and into a new space. Um, and all of our stuff would move with us. And as we didn't end up getting a studio worked out through the university over time, it became apparent we were going to need to move stuff to storage
Hmm.
and staff was going to be working from home. Um, and at some point I decided, okay, we don't have a studio to move to. We need to move our infrastructure to the transmitter to stay on the air. And so kind of when that was decided, it was like, okay, where's all of our storage going to go that people don't take home and doesn't go out to the transmitter?
Right.
And the university offered us space in the building next door. So we were in 4825 Troost. They offered us space in 4747 Troost. Um, and I think at that point, kind of the management was planning on that being just storage and having things move over there. But we were all kind of hoping that a studio would open up and we wouldn't have to move things twice, that we could
Hmm.
just move everything to a studio, even if it wasn't unpacked or any of that. Um, so then we did move our operations out to the transmitter site and we started voice tracking everything. And the staff who was live board operators was now voice tracking everything, and it was just a very different skill set for them. I bought a bunch of Focusrite, like USB to XLR interfaces for them. We got them all set up with their computers and training and stuff, but it was just doing a 4 hour shift was taking 8 hours.
Hmm.
People were up all night doing things, and nobody was real happy with it. It sounded good. It sounded okay. Not as good as normal, but we were still up. And um, so early that week, we had a meeting, and I was kind of like, okay, what can we do? What's our, and the university offered us some other spaces, but it was like, you can have this studio, but you're sharing it with students who have a class there at these times and our equipment and their equipment together. And it was just like a situation we didn't want to get into.
Hmm.
Um, and then our GM and our business operations officer was like, what about the storage space? Do you want to go look at it? And so we came over here and checked some things out. And they were like, this whole section was supposed to be for broadcast storage. If you want to use some of it for studios, go for it. So a few of the other staff and I just started moving things next door, walking across the street, bringing things over, and we started setting up studios here.
Sure. Yeah, and
Um,
I visited a few days ago, and there's quite a bit of space actually. So
there is, yeah,
probably more storage than you. Well, not probably because you're occupying it for studios. So obviously more storage than needed. So you were able to take advantage of some of the space that was left to you for this kind of a use. One thing I thought was interesting in the, I guess we can call it the main control room, and actually also in your office, I noticed that the walls already had sort of the old style pegboard, perforated wallboard with who knows what behind it,
yeah,
as if those rooms were going to be used for something with
something,
some sound type characteristic already in mind. So I don't know, is it just
yeah.
fortuitous? Not that it was the greatest sound treatment in the world, but it was something,
It
right?
was, yeah. It was strange. I wish I knew more of the history of this space because there is some there's a lot of little rooms that are a little too big for an office, but they have a chalkboard in them and chalk stuff. But then, like, you wouldn't have a classroom in there because maybe
Yeah,
three or
too
four
small
people
for a
would be the
classroom,
most.
right?
So, yeah, I don't know what was going on over here. So,
The fun part of that pegboard that you showed me is that golf tees fit perfectly in those holes. So
yeah,
your
yeah,
your your securing mechanism of choice for a lot of things are golf tees.
yeah,
But for temporary operation, you do what you got to do. You get it done, and you move on to
right.
take care of it. So
Yeah. Yeah, and at the time I didn't know if this was going to be like a week long we were operating from here or
sure,
what. So, and I guess I still don't. So,
yeah, still very much in the up in the air, I would guess. Um, so like we said, there was a 40-day window of you got to get out of this building. Did you start? Did you plan on moving to this temporary location before that announcement, or was it after that it became a okay, we really got to do this now and get started?
well, we decided to move into this space after we had already moved everything to the transmitter and we still had a couple, maybe a week left in the old building. So most of that, like, so we didn't pack up our master control studio yet, and we hadn't packed up one of our other studios. Even though our all of our broadcast was done from the transmitter at that point, we just were still using those studios to record in.
Hmm.
Um, but we were down to like a week, and the university wasn't offering any kind of extension or anything at that point. Um, and there were several times we thought the university was going to approve of a studio space for us to move to,
Hmm.
and then it fell through, or there was some kind of a reason we couldn't move there. So the whole time it was kind of like every day was different. I was planning on moving somewhere, or I was planning on something else, and then I'd find out like, nope, it's not approved, or
Right.
it's just taking too long. We need to do something else. So it was pretty wild. So yeah, we didn't know we were moving into this studio until that Friday when the GM was like, "Oh, do you want to use some of that storage space?"
Gotcha.
And that was kind of early on a Friday, and started moving in, started bringing in the acoustic foam, sticking it on the walls, and then there was kind of a staff party at the old building that night to kind of wish it, like nobody came back after that. Like
And if
that was
something
the
got
end.
spilled, who cares, right?
Right. Oh yeah, there was. I mean, I'll have to share some pictures. There's graffiti on the walls, and it was the building's coming down. Who cares?
There you go.
So, but then that weekend, a volunteer messaged me, kind of an old engineer, and was like, "Hey, what are you guys up to? I've been out of town. I'm back." A guy named Jeff Jackson, and he said, what are you up to? What do you need?" And so I took some pictures of what I was doing. And he said, "No, I've got way better equipment. I'll bring it. It's my spare." He showed up with a tub of connectors and a board, and Saturday and Sunday we got everything wired up. We showed the staff on Monday how it was all working, and they were like, "Let's go live tomorrow."
Hmm.
Um, in hindsight, I wish we had like waited another day and done some testing and stuff because that first start on Monday morning, or yeah, Tuesday morning at 5 in the morning was a little rough. But a lot of it was internet problems on campus that weren't anything to do with our studios, but it just made a whole lot of extra. Like everything's new and we're figuring things out, and when they're not
Right.
working, you assume it's something that we've not tested yet. Um, but we've been live ever since, getting better and better every day at using totally different setup than we're used to.
Cool. So you basically, I guess we could say you have three studios at this point. The main air studio, um, a room that I guess is sort of like news prep, news recording, and then a talk studio, which we have some photos and video of. Um, Tell us a little bit about some of those three spaces and what you had in mind as you were putting them together.
Yeah. So when we were setting up, none of the storage had moved over here yet. It was still all next door, all boxed up. So wasn't sure how much space we were going to really have. Um, and I tried to fit, master controls in a very small room, but it was the farthest away from any vents making noise. And it was just in an interior room, pretty quiet all around. So we picked that. And then we're used to having, good soundproof glass with visual between the announcers and newscasters, and we weren't going to have any of that. So I set up the news person through an open doorway, so they could still like see each other and do
Hmm.
cues. And at the time, I thought maybe our talk show would fit in that room too and just be extremely crowded. But once they went live and the newscaster set up, I knew there was no way because it was just they needed a lot more space than I was giving them in
Right.
there to do recordings and everything. So we operated like that for about a week. And at the time, our talk show was pre-recording things on campus in the library conference room. They didn't like the sound. They didn't like, there's no parking. There's hard to find guests in the
Hmm.
library and get them to the right room. And uh, so they were dealing with a lot of logistical problems. And it takes them a lot more time to edit shows and get them all ready to go than just an hour of live.
Hmm.
Um, so then they asked for some space here, and I had seen a room with carpet and also fairly quiet, and asked. It wasn't set aside for us with the university, but I asked about it. They did some checking, and actually there was a computer in there and a bunch of stuff, but you could tell nobody had been in there in a long time. So it was just kind of abandoned room. So they told us we could have that space too.
Okay.
This building has asbestos issues and everything, so I couldn't really run a cable between here and there, and they're on the opposite ends of the floor. So we ended up setting up a Comrex in both studios to connect them, set up another board. I got a table out of the university surplus pile and screwed mic stands into it. We were planning on drilling holes through it, but we ended up being able to run everything around the edge. And so we set up that studio. And again, these volunteer engineers, another one offered us up a board that he was using, a Rodecaster that handled the mix minus between the two studios really well.
Hmm.
And that's what the staff was using in the library. So they were really familiar with how that worked. So that made less things to have to learn on the first
Sure.
day. So that worked out really well. And actually, that producer came by today just to tell me how great everything's going and how happy they are in this space. So
It's good.
they'd like more room, but they're okay with what they have. So
So when I was there, the rooms you occupy are in a part of the building that I didn't see a lot of foot traffic in the first place. I mean, a few people here and there, but it's not
yeah,
exactly a hustle bustle area of the building, let alone part of the campus. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah. I think there's one group down here, the Spark group, that has classes and they do meetings and things down here. But there's other departments that have space down here, but I think it's all storage.
Hmm.
I know the Kansas City Repertory Theater was also in 4825 with us, and they got evacuated, and so they have some storage space down here. And I think when the university first had to evacuate that building, they were planning KC Rep to have all of this space. But
Oh,
KC Rep found a different area to move to, and that's when it became available to us.
gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the talk studio, it opens right into a hallway, which is not ideal if some loud talkers are going by in the middle of the show. I
Right.
saw some improvised soundproofing of a moving blanket hung over the door,
Yeah.
which, hey, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Right. Yeah. I think even I don't know how much insulation the blanket really provides or not, but it does like alert people something's weird right here.
Right.
And um
By nature, they tend to quiet down a little bit and go a
yeah.
little
And this
slower. And
even the staff when they come, it's like just look for the moving blankets. Those are the
there
studios.
you go.
And they know to quiet down when they get there. So
Funny.
yeah.
So you've already said we don't have you don't have a timeline yet on a final move, a final studio because you don't have a new space selected quite yet.
Yeah.
Um, you had mentioned to me when we talked before. We don't need to mention any names. You had worked with a commercial broadcast group here in town about perhaps moving in with them, and it started some talks, and it could have worked, but it just didn't quite fit right. What are some other? Are there any other groups you're talking to, or what's the current status on where you might end up before too long?
Yeah. Real quick, one thing, I was impressed with how many engineers in the area reached out, commercial and public, and just said, "Hey, this is a terrible situation. Like, we have this studio you could have, or we have this little area that's not soundproof, but you guys can move in there." TV and radio engineers. It was really cool that how many people reached out and offered. And we toured a bunch of different stations and tried to find something that would work well for
Hmm.
us. And just nothing ended up working out with between us and the university and the other groups. So, um, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the university put out a press release that they were working with a landlord in the Plaza, West Plaza area on 47th Street, that they were working on getting us a lease there.
For those of you who don't know, the Kansas City Metro, that's just south of the downtown area proper.
It's about a mile and a half from our studios right now,
Hmm.
just straight west. So it's nice that it's fairly close. But it's been 2 or 3 weeks since they released that, and I heard yesterday that the university lawyers have finished redlining the contracts and have sent them over to the lease. So maybe it's coming soon. I don't know, but it sounds like that's probably where we'll end up moving. But I've also heard that's only a 12-month agreement, and we'd be moving again most likely from there. So,
Again, not ideal, but
right. Yeah.
I mean, I guess better than the temporary, quickly, hastily put together, but it still does the job. But yeah,
And we could take
something
a little more
permanent, long
time
term.
setting that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, by all
So,
means. Well, I certainly hope, even if it is a 12 month to begin, that that's quickly renewable, and you're not if it comes to fruition, that is, and it's you're not moving again and again and again. So,
Right. Yeah.
to back up what you said about the engineering community in town, I mean, you and I are both in the Kansas City area, so I know very well the people you're talking about. And it's not just Kansas City. I've seen it all the cities I've lived throughout my career. And this is a good chance for the SBE plug, especially SBE members, but even non-members. The engineering community always has been there to help. I've always kind of chuckled when the managers in a certain market would all say, "Oh, you can't go to an SBE meeting," or "Don't let so and so in because he works for the competition. You don't want to give away our secrets." We all know the secrets. There
Right.
really
Yeah.
aren't any secrets. You know, your precious little audio processing tweak that you think, nobody else has. Yeah, we most of us probably know what it is. And the reality is that if the engineers weren't helping each other out behind the scenes, a lot of stations might not really be on the air. So,
Yeah. I mean, everybody
um,
has something on the shelf that comes in super handy for some other
exactly.
station that really saves the day.
Yeah.
And I had, yeah, engineers from Austin, Texas, from Columbia, Missouri, Nashville, helping out with stuff that
Hmm.
just knew we were in a rough situation and they really came through for us.
Cool. Very cool. Um, So obviously, once a new space is secured, the clock begins. Obviously, you don't want to hurry it through and make a big rush out of it, but you also don't want to stretch it out for too long. I'm gonna kind of guess you sort of have a preliminary plan in place of once you're told the word is given, what your steps are.
So I have the IT background and our old studios were all Wheatstone audio over IP. And so I've been missing being able to look at the software and see where all the audio is going. And so I really feel like get that set up again at the new studios. Um,
Yeah, because I guess right now you're kind of predominantly an analog
yeah.
with an accent, maybe.
Yeah, a lot of quarter-inch cables running around and RCA cables and things that we didn't have a whole lot of before. It was a lot more
Right.
Ethernet cables. So
Sure.
um, so it's been good for me to learn. And really moving a lot of our Wheatstone infrastructure to the transmitter has made me want to put audio over IP out there too, because there it was all digital, but it was XLR to XLR from device to device.
Hmm.
And just being able to change a cross point and have a new source feeding something with the click of a button instead of running out there and running a new cable it's been
Well, when
nice.
it comes time to do a cutover, it sounds like you've got something in place at the transmitter, so you're
Yeah.
not going to have to try to coordinate a cutover at 2 o'clock in the morning or something to try to fool everybody. You can be a little
Yeah.
more graceful about it. Perhaps, Friday afternoon, go to the transmitter, and then Monday morning, turn on from the new site and get a little
Yeah.
bit of time to work out some bugs,
Yeah.
find out what is or isn't quite right, that kind of a thing. So,
Yeah, I think we could pretty much automate a day pretty easily and move the last few things during that day and start troubleshooting.
yeah.
So,
Anything else on this whole process that I haven't touched on that you want to bring up at this point?
do you want to talk about the actual move to the transmitter?
Sure. Oh yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
it was
Tell me about
pretty.
some of that.
So, we to move to the transmitter and start automating the station. The Mark Johnson, the engineer at KBIA, offered to set up automation for our station on his system. We're Enco, I think he's wide orbit, but he was able to just kind of build a little more simple than our normal playlist, but build out our schedule for both our classical and our news station. And then he connected from his studios to our transmitter sites to keep us on the air
And
while we powered
KBIA
down
is
here
located where?
in Columbia, Missouri.
Okay.
So they're part of the same university system, but it wasn't like the university
They're the
organized this.
UM part of UMKC.
Yeah, right. And I'd worked with their engineer. He'd been to our station, I've been to his station, so we kind of knew each other's setup pretty
Sure.
well. And he's just one of those go-to people when I had questions, he always knew the answer. And then just really took it above and beyond to get us really good programming. So a lot of listeners probably didn't even know that our station was off, like our studios were off the air. But in order to do that, we had to get our sales staff had to get their underwriting copy early. They had to build the log early. They had to get everything recorded instead of read live. So there was days of kind of prep for this.
Yeah.
And as we got closer to the day we were planning to cut over, there's a snowstorm coming into town, and it's getting into the like negative temperatures. And a lot of people were like, "You got to postpone. It's not the right time for it." And it was like, "Well, this is kind of our last week. Like, if we don't get moved on this weekend, like I don't know when it's going to happen." And this snowstorm didn't look like it was going to like get warmer the next week or anything either. So we decided to go for it, even in the snow. And so I had to kind of pick and choose which volunteers could get to the station, were okay with being out in this. And so we had ended up with some pretty cool pictures of us like on the roof with the snow blowing and carrying boxes through 6 inches of snow into the transmitter and everything. But so we got this kind of 5 or 6 person crew together. Friday, we just prepped. We went through and every Studio Hub adapter that went out of a piece of equipment. We labeled what blade, what port it went into. We labeled our racks. This is where this is going. This is where this is going. And we just kind of had a detailed plan, and it kind of divided up on who was kind of the expert on each part of this, so that we could do it as fast as we could and as efficiently as possible. So then Saturday morning, everybody got here early, and instead of our board op going live, we went live to KBIA's feed, um, and just started unpacking or taking down the racks, labeling, lots of pictures. And we had this, I didn't come up with it, but this really ingenious system of what was in each box and when that box went into the vehicle so that the box you needed came out of the vehicle first and went into the rack at the new shop, at the new studios. So it was so efficient. I was really impressed with how well all that went. And our transmitter site wasn't set up to have all this extra equipment. So we borrowed a rack from the local PBS station that they were just like, "Oh, we're getting rid of this. Do you want it?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's just," and they're next door. So it was easy to just like roll it right in and get that all wired up. And so we had a pretty really long Saturday. I was probably a 12, 14 hour day with me and 4 or 5 others. And then we were in pretty good shape, and we there was a few people who wanted to just kind of power through. But I think we decided to like, let's call it, let's come back in the morning. There was 3 of us that needed to be there the next day, and like everybody else didn't really need to be there.
Right.
So we came back and we got more of a, I think I was there like 7 or 8 in the morning. Some of them were more like 9 or 10. And then at 2:30 in the afternoon, we were done and we went live from the transmitter site.
Mm.
And it was great. We sounded like we were our normal station again, normal programming, all the hosts that you would normally hear. Everything was pre-recorded, and our hosts have a lot of personality, and so they would put in their breaks like, "I'm not live, I'm doing this from my basement," and like kind of fun stuff. But other than that, you would think, so just a lot of the community was really kind of impressed when we were back that next week and things sounded normal.
So some of the programming you get from, we'll call them network feeds, how are those delivered? Are those sent to you
Yeah.
live and you pick them off on some sort of an Ethernet type feed, or are they recorded and you load them in, or it's a mix of both?
That was another kind of big part of this project. At our old studios, we had a satellite dish, and everything came in through NPR's distribution system on that dish. So when we unplugged those units and took them out to the transmitter site where there's no dish, they're running a 15-second or so delay, and they use terrestrial internet for their backup.
Okay.
So they kind of have these permanent alerts now that the satellite's not there and they're using their backup.
Right.
Um, which this 15-second delay was a huge, like, how are we going to deal with that? And our automation computers are not connected to the internet, they're isolated. So we were able to set their clocks back 15 seconds. So they're just running at a 15-second delay. And computer clocks are really bad at staying on time if they can't check constantly and like
Right.
double check if they're right. So they just drift one way or the other. So as we start to hear breaks getting cut off or not sounding quite right, then we go in and add a little more delay or a little less delay to the computer clocks
Sure.
to keep them on track. And kind of right when this all happened, I reached out to NPR and I was like, do we need to move the dish? Like, I know the CD Edge is coming out and it's not satellite based. And they said, no, we'll get you in our pilot program. We'll send you out a box right away. So when I got that box, we set up the studio and we were setting up the studio here. I set up this terrestrial only receiver here, and it has half a second delay. So that's what we're using from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. for our satellite, for what are our satellite feeds, which are network feeds now. And
Gotcha.
it's been really solid. I think I think there was one other station that was using it a little bit, but we're the first station using it like all the time. And we really haven't had any trouble with it at all.
Excellent.
And I don't, this room wasn't designed to be a studio. And out of the like three areas that were my storage, there was one network jack. And normally our university won't let you plug more than you can't like split your own, add a switch and add your own things in there. But I got permission and they opened up the ports. So I've got like both my Comrexes, this Content Depot Edge box, and the computer all running off of this one port, one jack in the wall.
Oh my.
I don't love it, but it's what we have.
Well, and well, through a network that you don't really have total control over on your own, and hoping that
Yeah,
between masks and routing and everything, it's
yeah,
hope it's all okay.
right. Yeah, versus me having like a primary network and a backup network before and multiple STL lines to switch between. That's all stuff I'd like to add back, but we just didn't have the ability to do when we moved. So
Sure. All the more reason to get into a permanent new home.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Yeesh.
yeah.
Living on the edge the whole
You're
time.
right. Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah.
Huh.
A lot of the staff are calling it pirate radio, and it kind of feels like it
Yeah, I
sometimes.
could kind of see that. It kind of
We
is.
popped
Yeah.
it up in a weekend, and hopefully it hopefully it keeps running.
Very cool. Anything else you want to mention or go through on all this fun extravaganza?
Not top of mind. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah. I think
Glad I got a
that's
little bit of time to talk to you about this in some detail. Like I said, we get together at the chapter meetings and we talk about a whole bunch of different things. But this is more detail than I've gotten from you before, just because we had a chance to be one-on-one in this case. So
right.
I
Yeah.
appreciate the time today, Chris,
Thank you.
and certainly appreciate you being part of the SBE WebXtra.
Thanks. Yeah, it was an amazing project for me. I had so much fun, even though I was working crazy hours and there was so many problems to figure out. It was like, yeah, one of the most fun things I've done at the station. So yeah,
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
enjoy talking about it. So
Cool.
yeah.
Well, when it's all said and done, maybe when you're into the new place and things, all the dust is settled, we can
Yeah.
do a follow-up visit and see what things look like now. So
Sounds good. Yeah.
great.
Right.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the SBE Web Extra, the SBE chapter of the web from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks again to Chris Pruitt, my guest, for joining me today. If you have a topic or an idea for or a guest for the SBE Web Extra, send it to webextra@sbe.org. And if you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE Web Extra qualifies you for 1/2 point in Category G, that's attendance. It's just like attending a local chapter meeting. Once again, thanks for watching. I'm Chris Scherer, SBE Communications Director, and I'll see you next month.